Hi, I'm Trevor Stevenson, and welcome to Your Story Will Be Different. This is a narrative play podcast where I tell you the story that came to be from playing a solo tabletop role-playing game. We're picking up where we left off last time with our hero, Frico Lillet, intergalactic bounty hunter, fighting a Yeti at the top of a mountain. Let's dive right in. As the Yeti lunged forward, Frico rolled to the side, narrowly avoiding the creature's massive claws. His duster wasn't as fortunate and now sported a very unfashionable slash across the back. He fired again, the laser searing through the snow and hitting their mark. The Yeti staggered back, its fur scorched and smoking. But the battle was far from over. The wounded Yeti was enraged, and its next attack was even more ferocious. It swiped at Frico with its massive paw. He managed to evade the blow, but it cost him precious ground. Another step or two backwards would result in a plummet to the bottom of a canyon. Frico continued to fire, his laser pistol striking the Yeti's torso and limbs. The creature howled in agony, its breath formed icy clouds in the mountain air. It was weakened, but it still posed a deadly threat. It grabbed a boulder and hurled it at him with furious force, causing him to take another step back towards the edge. With a final surge of determination, Frico aimed his pistols at the Yeti's head and fired. The intense beams of energy struck true, and the creature let out a deafening, guttural scream. Its massive body convulsed and then collapsed into the snow, motionless. The high mountain pass fell silent. Frico stood panting, his laser pistol still trained on the fallen Yeti. The threat had been neutralized, but the adrenaline still coursed through his veins. The villager's tormentor had been defeated. Exhausted and bruised, Frico turned to see the grateful villagers who had followed his trail cautiously. They looked upon him with a mix of relief and awe, grateful for his bravery and skill. As Frico prepared to leave the treacherous mountain pass behind, he couldn't help but wonder about the mysteries of the universe. He had faced countless adversaries in his line of work, but this monstrous creature, with its elusive nature and eerie wails, would remain etched in his memory as one of the most enigmatic challenges he had ever encountered. The elder villager greeted him with such zeal that Frico almost felt embarrassed. After explaining that the creature had been keeping the plunder from the killed travelers in its den nearby, Frico understood why their enthusiasm was warranted. The bounty hunter had inadvertently made these destitute travelers filthy rich. The elder then exerted himself to cut off one of the curled horns from the Yeti as a reward for his efforts. This will fetch you a great price in any town. After another day of hiking, Frico found himself standing on a bluff looking down over the wreckage of a great battlefield. In the middle of these busted ships and tanks, like cargo ship TA-422, a repurposed freighter ship that now acted as the shell for a small town run by Utah locals. Cargo ship TA-422 loomed large before Frico as he approached it, the creaking of its aged metal hull a constant reminder of its long service in the galaxy. The ship had been repurposed into a bustling hub of activity where locals went about their daily lives. Among the inhabitants, Frico hoped to find his target and get off this icy hell. As he wandered through the bustling market, he heard whispers of a master artisan named Eli Joke, known for crafting exceptional weapons and armor. Frico followed the directions provided by the locals and found himself standing before a cramped, cluttered shop. The doorbell jingled as Frico entered, and the dimly lit shop was filled with the warmth of a working forge. Weapons and armor adorned the walls, each a masterpiece of craftsmanship. The place was a treasure trove of arms and armor, a bounty hunter's dream. Behind the counter stood Eli Joke, a skilled human artisan whose hands had shaped countless weapons. His eyes gleamed with pride as he examined his work, unaware of the customer who had just entered. Frico cleared his throat, and Eli looked up, offering a friendly smile.
Ah, a new customer. Welcome to Joke's Forge. What can I do for you today?
Frico, still captivated by the quality of the craftsmanship on display, responded, Word on the street out there is you're the best in the business, if not the planet. I'm looking to improve my weapons, make them more efficient. Can you help? Eli's eyes sparkled with enthusiasm.
Of course, my friend. I can take your weapons and turn them into works of art, more deadly than you've ever imagined.
But as Frico started to hand over his laser pistols, something on a cluttered shelf in the corner of the shop caught his eye. An old, battered hover bike helmet. It was almost unrecognizable, but its distinctive shape and a few telltale scratches were enough to trigger a flood of painful memories for Frico. Suddenly, he was back in his youth, speeding down a winding canyon on a hover bike next to his best friend, the warm wind in his face, the thrill of the rides they just stole. It had been their first taste of freedom, but that freedom had come at a cost. The bike had malfunctioned, sending Frico into a spin that sent them both crashing into the canyon wall. The accident had left him scarred and shaken. His friend's dead eyes stared up at him and haunted his dreams still. He had never fully recovered from the trauma and was forced to join the Imperial Navy to escape charges. As the memories rushed back, Frico's heart pounded and his breath grew labored. He clutched his chest, struggling to maintain his composure. The sound of the forge's bellows, the clinking of metal, and the hiss of the cooling forge all blended into a cacophony that threatened to overwhelm him. Eli noticed the change in Frico's demeanor, his jovial expression turning to concern.
Are you all right, friend? You look pale.
Frico managed to stammer out a response, his voice shaky. I need to step outside for a moment. It's nothing. It's just a sudden headache. He rushed out of the shop, gasping for air as the memories of that fateful hoverbike accident continued to haunt him. The past was a shadow he could never fully escape, a reminder of the scars he carried both inside and out. Eli watched Frico's hasty exit, his brow furrowed in concern. He knew that sometimes the wounds that were hardest to heal were the ones that no amount of craftsmanship could mend. Breathing deeply while he navigated the makeshift streets, Frico couldn't help but notice a trader's booth brimming with an array of cold weather gear. Thick, insulated jackets, fur-lined gloves, and boots designed for icy terrain filled the display. It was exactly what Frico needed to survive the harsh environment as he approached the trader with a sense of purpose. The trader, a rugged individual with a weathered face, looked up from his wares as Frico approached. He nodded in greeting, his eyes assessing the bounty hunter. Need something to keep you warm, traveler. This planet ain't too forgiving, especially for you Kamanos. Frico nodded in agreement. You're right about that. I've got something that's supposedly valuable to trade for some cold weather gear. I recently had a run-in with a Yeti, and I managed to bring back its, horn? The trader's eyes widened with interest at the mention of the Yeti horn. Such rare and formidable creatures were seldom encountered, and their horns were highly sought after for their supposed mystical properties. A Yeti horn, you say? Well, that's quite the offer. Let's see it. Frico reached into his pack and produced a gnarled, ivory-hued Yeti horn. The trader took it in his hands, turning it over to examine it closely. He seemed satisfied with its authenticity and nodded approvingly. You've got yourself a deal, the trader said, his voice tinged with excitement. This Yeti horn will fetch a hefty price. Take your pick of cold weather gear. I've got the best selection on this ship. Frico selected a heavy insulated jacket that would provide ample protection from the freezing temperatures, a pair of sturdy, fur-lined boots that kept his feet warm and dry, and a set of thermal gloves to ensure his hands would remain functional in the biting cold. With the exchange made, Frico donned his new gear, feeling the warmth immediately seeping into his bones. He thanked the trader and set out once more, better equipped to face the harsh environments of the planet. After some inquiries into the elusive gold refugee, Frico was directed to wrecked Walker SNWK-4, a small outpost run by his current employer, the Trade Alliance. Frico saw this for what it was. An excellent place to check in for updates and possibly get some rest at the expense of answering for not immediately satisfying his contract. Unfortunately, the most direct path was going to take him through an area the locals colorfully called the Devil's Eye. Deep within the heart of the pitch-black cavern, the eerie silence was palpable, and an unsettling feeling gnawed at the edges of his nerves. He knew he was being watched. The piercing glow of eyes in the dark confirmed his suspicion. With a quick and practiced motion, Frico unholstered his trusty laser pistols. He'd faced countless dangers across the galaxy, but everything on Utah set him on edge now. He was always ready for the unknown, but he'd been surprised too much on this trip. The creature observing him from the darkness revealed itself as a colossal velvet worm, fresh from the recesses of any nightmare. The worm, sensing Frico's presence as a threat, attacked from a distance. It spat corrosive acid toward him with deadly precision. Frico dodged the acid projectiles and returned fire with his laser pistols, sending searing energy bolts into the cavern's abyss. The battle raged on, the cavern illuminated with the pulsing glow of the worm's eyes and the fierce discharge of Frico's weapons. The worm's acid attacks were relentless, but with each precise shot, he inched closer to victory. Finally, after a tense exchange of fire, Frico's laser pistols found their mark. A critical hit struck the colossal velvet worm, causing it to writhe in agony. Its glowing eyes dimmed, and it collapsed in a pool of its own acidic secretions. Frico stood triumphant, his laser pistol still crackling with energy. The cavern once again fell into an eerie silence, and the watchful eyes were now extinguished. A day later, Frico Lillet stepped into the dimly lit outpost known as Wrecked Walker SNWK4. The air was filled with a mix of industrial sounds and hushed conversations, typical of these remote trade alliance outposts. He could feel the anticipation building in his chest as he approached the makeshift command center where he hoped to gather more information on his elusive target. As he approached the command center, Frico was met with stern faces of Trade Alliance operatives, busy analyzing data and coordinating various missions. The tired-looking officer behind the reception desk acknowledged him with a nod.
Name and business?
The officer asked, not bothering to look up from the data pad in front of them. Frico Lillet, Nomad. I'm here to check in and see if there are any new leads or information on Isha Capre, Frico replied, his voice calm and authoritative. The officer typed a few keystrokes and then glanced up at Frico.
Capre, huh? No updates on her whereabouts, I'm afraid. She's a slippery one. That's why we hired a nomad to handle it.
Frico clenched his jaw but managed to maintain his composure. He thanked the officer and decided to scan the room for anyone who might have additional information. Damn it. One of the locals, a scruffy-looking engineer who had been eavesdropping on the conversation, approached Frico.
You're hunting Isha Capre, huh?
He asked, scratching his unshaven chin. Frico regarded the man with a hint of suspicion but nodded in acknowledgement. That's right. You got something to share? The local nodded eagerly.
I heard the whispers, you know. People say she's been spotted on the outer fringes, maybe hiding out near Cyan Ridge. It's a rough place, even for her.
Cyan Ridge was still under the old empire, but was known for harboring outlaws and fugitives, making it the perfect place for someone like Capre to lay low. He thanked the local for the tip and decided it was time to rest and gather his resources. Much obliged, Frico said to the informant. I'll look into it. And you said something about a place to rest. The scruffy local grinned, his missing tooth quite noticeable on his rugged face.
I've got a bunk you can use. It's not much, but it's better than the floor. Follow me.
Rested for the first time in days, Frico felt renewed in his hunt. On his trek, he squinted at the smoky horizon as he made his way towards the dusty road to Cyan Ridge Fish Market. The blaze in the distance cast an eerie orange glow against the alien landscape. As he approached the burning building, the acrid scent of charred wood and melting metal filled his nostrils. The structure was well ablaze, its flames dancing wildly against the darkening sky. A quick scan of the surrounding revealed a trail of fresh footprints leading away from the inferno. Someone had escaped, and they had done so in a hurry. Frico, never one to shy away from a mystery, followed the tracks. They led him to the ruins of a once sturdy cottage. Amidst the charred remnants of furniture and personal belongings, he found a series of clues pointing to the culprit. The old empire. In the smoky rubble, Frico discovered a scorched piece of cloth with the unmistakable emblem of the old empire faction. The symbol depicted a menacing black dragon, entwined with a crumbling crown. Near the ruined front door, Frico found a partially melted communicator device. Its circuits had been intentionally fried, but it bore markings suggesting it was Imperial technology. Hidden beneath a scorched mattress, Frico found a hastily hidden note. The ink was smudged, but he could make out the words, "Strike on Cyan Ridge complete, next target." The message was unsigned, but it was undoubtedly a chilling declaration of intent. The Old Empire faction had been a thorn in the galaxy's side for too long, and their brazen attack on innocent civilians couldn't be ignored. He pocketed the device and set off towards Cyan Ridge Fish Market. Though there was no smoke to be seen, Frico could practically smell the burning that had hung in the air from the recent attack. The once bustling atmosphere now replaced with the grim presence of Old Empire soldiers. As Frico scanned the area, he noticed a figure cautiously approaching him through the crowd. The bandaged Mirian introduced himself as Yuka Balone and asked if he was a nomad. I guess word's getting around.
Not a lot of one-eyed Kimanos walking around these days. Follow me, we can't afford to be seen here.
They quickly slipped into a nearby alley, away from prying eyes and ears. Frico wasted no time and got straight to the point. I'm here for information on Isha Capre. I've been tracking her for what feels like weeks, and I've heard she's been active in this sector. Yuchu's expressions darkened as he leaned in closer.
Isha Capre, she's not who you think she is, Frico. The Trade Alliance paints her as a dangerous criminal, but the truth is more complicated.
Frico tilted his head, intrigued by the unexpected twist. Go on. Yuchi continued.
Isha did steal weapons from the Trade Alliance, but it wasn't for her own gain. Those weapons were destined for the new uprising, to be used against the old empire. However, there's a hidden agenda here, one that few are aware of.
Hidden agenda? What do you mean? Yuchu leaned in closer, lowering his voice even further.
The Trade Alliance is playing both sides, Frico. They've been secretly supplying arms to both the new uprising and the old empire. By keeping both factions armed and in conflict, they're driving up the demand for weapons, which in turn increases their profits. It's a ruthless business strategy, and it's tearing our sector apart. The locals here are acceptable collateral damage.
Frico's mind raced. The situation had just become far more complex than he initially imagined. So Isha Capre was unwittingly caught in this web of deceit? Yuchu nodded grimly.
Exactly. Isha thought she was striking a blow against the oppression by stealing those weapons, but in reality, she's just a pawn in the Trade Alliance's game.
Frico clenched his fists, his determination solidifying. One way or the other, I still need to find Isha. Do you have any leads on her whereabouts? Yuchu hesitated for a moment before speaking.
She's gone underground, hiding from both the Old Empire and the Trade Alliance. Promise me one thing.
They locked eyes. Maybe. Yuchu's voice was resolute as he said,
Expose the Trade Alliance's treacherous scheme. Bring them to justice for what they've done to Utah.
I'll do what I can. I still have a job to do.
Ice flow.
The bounty hunter scowled. That's a joke, right? I just stopped by Ice Flow and was pointed this way. Yuchu nodded, checked once more to make sure that he wasn't being watched, and skittered off into the shadows. After a moment of frustrated reflection, Frico pressed on into the town. He noticed a commotion up ahead. A crowd had gathered around a heated argument between a stubborn local, Jarl Barok, and two hostile-looking new uprising soldiers. Frico's instincts kicked in, and he approached the scene cautiously. The soldiers, their faces etched with anger and frustration, were aggressively demanding something from Jarl. Frico couldn't quite make out the details of the dispute, but it was clear that Jarl was holding his ground, his defiance unwavering. They turned their hostile glares toward him. One of them snarled,
"This isn't your business, Nomad. Move along."
Frico's eyes narrowed. His voice took on a stern tone. I don't like bullies. You two better explain yourselves, or things are going to get messy. The soldiers hesitated for a moment, but their resolve quickly crumbled. One of them muttered under his breath, "Nomads always bring trouble."
"Because of you bastards, I was an orphan."
Frico's gaze didn't waver as he spoke. Taking it out on innocent locals won't bring them back. Now back off. Reluctantly, the soldiers retreated, leaving Jarl Barok to catch his breath and regain his composure. Frico turned to the Samborn shapeshifter and offered a nod of support. Jarl's features shifted into a grateful smile.
"Thank you for that."
Frico replied with a nod. No one should be pushed around like that. Jarl hesitated before revealing.
"They were demanding my latest masterpiece. A suit of advanced armor I was crafting for the new uprising. They said they needed it for an important mission, but their aggression made me doubt their intentions.
Frico's mottled skin flushed. Advanced armor? Jarl nodded.
Yes, it's a work of art and technology. I specialize in crafting armors that not only provide protection, but is light enough to be woven into basic attire. More protection, with less brazenness.
A well-crafted armor could be invaluable in this line of work. Frico leaned in and said, "Could you upgrade any kind of wardrobe?" Catching the bounty hunter's drift, Jarl grinned. His form shifted slightly with excitement.
Absolutely. In fact, I'd be honored to. Step into my workshop and we'll discuss the details.
While Jarl worked on his garments, he postulated that the soldiers were going to take the armor back to Iceflow. As Frico approached the imposing gates of the Iceflow military base, a sense of tension filled the air. The base was known for its strict security, and Frico's previous encounters with these guards hadn't gone unnoticed. Two burly and hostile guards stood before the entrance, their faces twisted in recognition and anger as they locked eyes with the intergalactic bounty hunter. Frico's hand instinctively moved towards his laser pistol, ready for whatever confrontation lay ahead. He knew he had a growing reputation, and it wasn't always a favorable one amongst those in the military. The guards, however, wasted no time in taunting him.
Look who's back,
one of the guards sneered, his voice dropping with contempt.
Thought you'd run us off last time, didn't you?
Frico's response was cold and unwavering. I'm still giving you a chance to walk away peacefully. Make the right call here. The other guard cracked his knuckles menacingly and grabbed his weapon. With a quick draw, Frico unholstered his laser pistols, the barrels glowing with lethal energy. He pointed them squarely at the guards, his voice dripping with menace. I'm not here for a fight, but I won't hesitate to defend myself. The guards, despite their bluster, must have seen the determination in Frico's eye. Nonetheless, they made their reckless decision to attack. One of them lunged forward, fists raised, while the other drew a stun baton, its blue energy crackling ominously. Frico fired a precise shot, striking the guard with the stun baton squarely in the chest. The shot sent him sprawling to the ground with a smoking hole in his back. The second guard, seeing his companion go down, hesitated for a moment. Frico used that moment wisely, firing a shot that grazed the guard's shoulder, causing him to cry out in pain and drop to his knees. With the threat neutralized, Frico holstered his pistols and approached the incapacitated guard. He spoke in a stern tone. Next time, remember my warning. Stay out of my way. The guard, humbled and defeated, nodded weakly. Frico then continued his way, passing through the gates. He made his way to the command center of Iceflow, but stopped himself from entering the front door. Something was off. As Frico moved through the bustling corridors of the Iceflow military base, he couldn't help but notice that some of the locals were acting strangely. Their expressions were vacant. They moved with an eerie, robotic precision. A chill ran down his spine as he followed a faint, low hum that seemed to emanate from a nearby building. His instincts told him something was amiss. He cautiously pushed open the door to the source of the sound. Inside, he was met with a bizarre and unsettling sight. A mystic warrior, her eyes glowing with an otherworldly energy, stood in the center of the room. Her psychic powers were on full display as she exerted control over the minds of the local residents, who were now kneeling before her in a trance. Frico wasted no time. Drawing his laser pistols, he pointed them at the Mystic Warrior, his voice firm and commanding, "Release them, now!" The Mystic Warrior turned to him, her gaze meeting with his in an air of defiance. She seemed unfazed by the threat of his weapons.
You can't stop me, Nomad. These people are under my control.
But as Frico kept his weapons trained on her, her two guards, realizing the danger they were in, decided to make a hasty retreat. They bolted for the door, fleeing the scene as fast as their legs could carry them. Seeing her guards desert her, the Mystic Warrior hesitated for a moment, then released her hold on the locals. The glazed expressions vanished, and the residents blinked in confusion as they regained their senses and hastily left the confrontation. Frico kept his pistols aimed at the Mystic Warrior, but spoke with a touch of curiosity. "You got a name?"
Ilara.
What's your game here? The Mystic Warrior's demeanor shifted from hostility to resignation.
Our parents were standing in line for rations when the blast ripped through the market. We were just children when we learned about the war and the term collateral damage. After that, it was just me and my sister. We stole to eat. On some nights, we huddled together for warmth to sleep. On the colder nights, we broke into places, but we had each other. After word got out that we were gifted, someone took her while we were sleeping. It took everything I had to find out what happened to her, but eventually someone slipped that she was a nomad now. After some time, more rumors spread that she was ruthless, cold-hearted. I tried to follow her path through the Mystic Order, but I still couldn't find her or talk to her.
Frico lowered his pistol slightly, intrigued by her revelation. So you were trying to reach your sister by controlling these people's minds? Ilara nodded, her shoulders slumping.
Yes.
Frico maintained a cautious stance but considered her words. How is that gonna work? Ilara nodded again, her expression regretful.
I am going to bring her here to follow a contract. I've been unable to get in touch with her in any other means.
Finally, holstering his pistols, Frico said, if she's as cold-blooded as you say, what's to stop her from killing you herself for the bounty? Ilara hesitated. You hadn't thought that far ahead, had you? All those psychic powers, and yet the Mystic Order doesn't really focus on common sense.
I see that now. I'll leave these people alone and find a better path.
Frico kept a watchful eye on her as she backed away slowly, eventually exiting the building. He knew that sometimes even those who appeared hostile could have their reasons, and in this case, Ilara's actions were driven by a misguided attempt to find and protect her sister. He was still in ice flow when the warning fob in his pocket was activated. Frico's heart raced as he received the urgent notification that an unauthorized presence had breached his ship on the other side of the planet. His ship was his only sanctuary, and the idea of it being desecrated spawned a burning hatred behind his eye. He stepped out of earshot of some of the locals and activated the fob for the ship's communication system. On the other side of Utah, through the ship's speakers, his voice resounded with a stern edge. Identify yourself. You're trespassing on private property, and that will not go well for you when I find you. A voice cackled back, tinged with arrogance.
Watch your tone, Lillet. You're overdue for a progress report. Trade Alliance is growing rather impatient with your lack of progress on the Isha Capre contract.
Frico's jaw tightened, but he kept his composure. I've been making progress. I'll find her soon enough. You don't need to worry about that. The scout's voice grew impatient.
Words won't cut it, Frico. Trade Alliance expects results, and they don't appreciate delays.
Frico brought the comm fob closer, his tone firm. Tell the Trade Alliance that they'll get their target, but I won't be rushed. I'm not one to make hasty decisions that could lead to innocent lives being harmed. The Nomad Code requires discretion, and you all were made well aware of that as a condition when you made the contract in the first place. The scout hesitated for a moment, then grumbled.
Very well, Nomad. We'll give you a little more time, but the clock is ticking.
Frico afforded himself a sigh of relief. Off mic, of course. Good. Now get off my ship immediately. Just as Frico was about to disengage the communication, the scout's voice came through one final time, filled with a sinister note.
See you soon.
We'll go ahead and leave off the story there, and we will conclude Frico's story in the next session. I want to thank you again for listening to Your Story Will Be Different. It's a lot of fun to record this podcast, and I hope it's enjoyable for you to listen to. If you want to support the podcast, the best thing you can do right now is leave a review on Apple Podcasts. And the second best thing you can do is tell someone about it. It's early days right now, so word of mouth is incredibly powerful. As I've said before, I'm going to leave a link in the show notes to the game Notorious by Jason Price. And I hope that you enjoy your intergalactic bounty hunter. But just remember, your story will be different.